Hello and welcome, everyone. We are back. That's right. It is the Quacken Smite League podcast. It's been one heck of a season. I guess I have to apologize here. Normally we would, especially in season 4, we were doing weekly podcasts. We were trying to maintain that. Life gets busy. We understand, but I do want to apologize to our listeners first because I know you guys were hoping to get all of this content and it just fell through. But hopefully, with a renewed vigor, with a renewed season, things will kind of get back to normal heading into season 6. But before we get into that, let's have a little recap on season 5. And of course, I'm not the only one here. In fact, joining me tonight, we got a bit of a round table here tonight. So I've got Calobski, Cooter, Cyber, and Ross, report or support, uh, with me tonight, and we're just gonna talk about season 5. Gonna take a look at the season in total, uh, what the ups were, what the downs were, maybe a little bit of playoff stuff, and then maybe some postseason stuff and kind of thinking about things, and then maybe some expectations for season 6. But gentlemen, good evening. How are you doing?
Good,
Doing
Red.
well.
I don't know about all these other boys, but I'm good, Red. Good to see you. I'm glad to be back.
I'm doing great. I'm Ross. I'm excited.
Feeling pretty good myself.
I'm time my life, to be honest. I'm enjoying life. So
Excellent. Hey, you know what? It's better to be doing life than doing anything else, right?
hmm
true.
The alternative is not great. I'm not good for gray screens.
Right. I see that way too often. I've had enough gray screen in my life, so. Oh boy. Anyway, so let's talk about season 5. So, season 5 started back in February, if you can believe that. And just ended this past week in April, the end of April. Um, so our first matchups, and this was kind of an interesting thing for us. We decided this season to do a org v org. So the Kraken's team would face off, the Deep Sea teams would face off, and the amateurs teams would all face off, and they would all be from the same organization. So it was org v org every single week. We had 8 teams in each division, and oh boy, I mean, technically, we could talk the most about the Ducklings because they played the most games throughout the season. Or I should say, completed the most games throughout the season.
Mhm.
But everyone kind of wants to hear about Krakens, and because that's your upper echelon players. Um, so how, in your opinion, gentlemen, how do you think the Kraken season went this year, or this season, I should say?
I won't start this one off. How about you, Ross?
well, I honestly thought that it was okay. There was like where we can't forget about that one hiccup with the Frost Fox Majors team and their whole thing going really bad. But I feel like other than that, I feel like the whole season was better. It it wasn't better in season 4, but it was still pretty good in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you touched on something pretty important there. I think from my perspective, obviously, I think it went really well. But
Gee, I wonder
the
why.
I got literally everything I wanted in the draft, and then it worked out.
Uh,
So we'll take those. We take those. Um, but yeah, I mean the two teams not playing a single set kind of put a damper on the Kraken season. But I think overall the games that were actually played, a lot of them were very competitive. Specifically, the Landlords team was a very good team, and I think that it made for some entertaining smite without a doubt.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you know that there are going to be issues. I mean, it's the nature of Smite, right? Or I should say, that's the nature of a comp league. You've got various people coming from different walks of life trying to take time out of their busy schedules to come together to play a
hmm
game. and sometimes real life invades that. I mean, I know I had issues this past season. I know other people had issues this past season. But as you said, we had two teams that just didn't play a set, and they kind of. I mean, when it's 40% of the games that season, it's kind of difficult. So I know maybe you guys aren't directly in. I would say intimately involved with the Krakens, but I know Calobski and Cyber, you guys have friends and have been looking at Krakens as well. Um, Sort of an outside perspective in, at least with you two guys, what are the Krakens competition? Is that something to aspire to, or is that something that you were looking forward to watching this season? What was Krakens for you this season at least?
Go ahead, Cyber.
Um, it was definitely interesting to say the least. Everyone likes watching high quality like Smite. That's why we watch SCC, we watch SPL. So to watch players that we know play to the highest like degree is actually pretty fun and pretty interesting. And that's why I feel like every time there was a game for Kraken, a lot of people tuned in because they just want to watch people that they know, but also very good Smite players play Smite game. So for me, it was just very fun to watch and like fun to engage with. To be honest, like I just enjoyed it for the most part.
Personally, for the crack, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of sleeping on it. Not that I wasn't looking forward to it. I just didn't find the time to stop by, so I'm not very educated on this topic.
Cyber was living in the chat though. It was fantastic.
Yeah, man. I was really into that, man. I was like, oh yes, sir. Who's gonna win?
And I
On the
think
funny
that's
side, I
like
kind of was just into all of them.
I think that's like a testament to the organizational style, right? Because if you have somebody to root for in the game that's being played, whether it's your friend or whether it's your org or whatever, you're obviously going to be more in tune to the game, more excited to see the outcome or what have you. So I think that's a testament to QSL and bringing in this organizational style and continuing to have it season after season.
Yeah, I mean it's always fun watching the you think of some of these players and I mean it just you think of, oh, I get to watch chefs and NMR and some of these guys like Boogie Dude, Sub Killer, Drew's Food, guys that you interact with in chat, and they're not high and mighty, or they're not like people that are just untouchable, and yet at the same time, like even just watching them, you're like, how do you do that? Just what? Why do you outplay just people that are insanely more talented than I am? And yet I get to talk to you and ask you things on builds and ask you strategy stuff, and that's one of the great things I love about QSL is there is that personality aspect to it. Um, Now granted, it's not perfect, so to speak, but it's very interesting to have that kind of ability to it. Um, Moving along a little bit here, I want to make sure that we're using our time wisely. Um, but let's talk about some deep sea stuff because this seems to be the bulk of the players in the QSL. You have those real high level skilled guys. You have the people that are kind of new to comp or are still learning the game, but there's a lot that reside in the deep sea level, what used to be called miners, somewhere between plat and diamond, that are really talented, I would say, in the game, but are on the verge or on the cusp of being, that elite echelon level, um, and just absolutely school on, some of us in the lower levels. Um, but so I know Cyber and Ross, you guys at least are a little bit more familiar with that level. Well, Cooter as well, but um, especially Cyber, Mister Champion here.
Yes, sir.
I
Is there a U in that word? Did you CHUMPION?
I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it. I can't. A Loki
Wow,
main
man. Wow.
should not be a champion. I refuse.
Again.
Oh,
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna
Wait,
lie.
is there
We've
another
been
time?
us Loki mains have been champions the last 3 seasons. Like it's just if you're a Loki main, you just win. Like I don't know what to tell you.
I just the pain that's just pain. That's what that is. But anyway, so how did you guys at least enjoy the deep sea season? Did you find it was competitive, or was it just like was there a min max of like there were two teams that were great and everybody else sucked?
All right. Well, you can start, Ross. You can start then.
No, you got it, man. You got it.
All right. All
You
right.
want to
So
start it.
so this is my set on this, right? So Deep Sea was just kind of interesting because like you had like four to five good teams, and then it was like 3 teams where you just knew just weren't cut out to win games. If I could be blunt about it. So in my opinion, it was competitive for the most part. Most of the games were competitive, just around the whole league. But there were games where you're like, oh, this team is playing this team. Well, we kind of know the outcome of that. So like it's not really much you can do about that. But for the most part, it's competitive and fun. So there's that. You know, I enjoy the players there. They're all fun. They're all competitive, and yeah, Ross, you can go now.
All right. So DC was very interesting. At the very beginning, like all the way to playoffs, I thought the Ferrymen looked very dominant. I'm just gonna be real. They're like, was it 10-0? They're like undefeated, and like I honestly thought it was gonna be with Ferrymen, and then like I don't know who was gonna be, maybe Landlords or something like that. But then after that, like that whole thing with Ferrymen and Rockhoppers winning it all, was it? I think they won like I think was it Ferrymen only won one game, and then Rockhoppers just like three won them, and it was
Reverse
like
sweep, Ross. It
It
was
was
a
a
reverse
was
reverse
it? It was a
sweep.
reverse. Okay, I'm just
We
sorry.
was
I'm
down.
thinking
We
about
was
something
down
else. Then.
0-2, man. We was down
My fault.
0-2.
I'm fumbling the bag. So like yeah, it was a reverse sweep, and I was just like, oh, yo, they just choked. But it was a very interesting final right there. Uh, Shout out to all the players over there. They all deserve it. All I gotta say is, uh, Rockhoppers deserve that win. They played great that finals.
Yeah, oh man, that was a very interesting finals set to watch. I only got to watch a little bit of it just because of the timing of everything, but that was a lot of fun at least. And Cooter, I know you had this whole balancing issue, I should say, between org owner, player, captain, this, that, the other thing, but as a man of many hats, how was your deep sea season?
I think it was a pretty good season. My team in particular was, in my opinion, I think they were one of the more talented teams overall, but they just they all have other things to do, and we didn't really have time to scrim or like play casuals together. But you would see a couple people get together for some casuals, and then some, two other people get together for casuals. But the only time we really got together was we scrimmed one time before the season, which we played. We ended up playing with our solo laner who didn't end up playing a game all season, and then we ended up making a roster move for ADC, and then we made another roster move for ADC. So it was I think overall I think my team was very good, um, and they're very very talented players, but unfortunately we couldn't put it together, and I think that the front half of our schedule being as difficult as it was, kind of hurt us in the long run. We played the Ferrymen and the Landlords, the two teams that everybody thought until the playoffs were going to be the two teams to meet in the finals, but and we ended up losing both of those sets. But it was a fun it's fun to play the game competitively because I personally, from my end, I haven't played the game competitively in a couple of QSL seasons. I've been sitting in the background, org ownership, pulling the strings in the draft and helping out with scheduling. But I personally really loved getting back into the competitive scene and actually being able to play the game. But I think earlier what Cyber said about a couple teams just not being very competitive, and then you had the top 4 teams being hyper competitive. I think that hit nail on the head, Cyber. That was amazing. I think you called it out really well.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
looking back at the results here, I mean, you look at it and you're like, okay, it was 1 win, 1 loss, 2 wins,
Mhm.
2 losses. There's a little bit of back and forth like that, but I do have to say your conference there was the only one that perfectly stacked
Oof.
up.
Yes.
Because like the Ferrymen went 10-0, the Landlords went 8-2, you guys went 6-4. It was either 2-0 or it was 0-2. There was no in between. Like the Immortals conference, the other side of that bracket was just complete chaos back and forth, trying to figure out what in the world was going to happen. But you guys, it was like, no, we're either going to do this or not going to do this, and there's no in between.
Yeah, I think it stacked up. I think you hit that too. Like it stacked up. Like the Ferrymen looked really good for most of the season until the finals. Anyway, the Landlords looked really good off the bat. We had a couple unfortunate plays against them, but I mean those were our 4 losses, and the rest of them were kind of easy. I mean we did have a couple forfeits, but the rest of the games were fairly easy games. We walked out with a 2-0. I honestly I think that the conference that we were in, that my team was in, was very stacked. And I think the other side was a little soft, if I'm being honest.
Hey man, hey
And
man, hey man, hey man.
and hey,
Go, come on,
you
man.
say that, but the champions of that division
I know.
came
I
out of that
know.
conference. So,
Yo,
I
speaking of that, right? I gotta put you on the spot, right?
uh-oh.
So
Uh-oh.
yeah, So let's talk about your deep sea playoff
Oh
predictions, man.
gosh.
Let's
Whoa,
talk
whoa,
about
whoa, whoa,
that.
whoa. Wait, hang on. Before we do that, let's talk about playoffs after we're done, okay? After we're
all
done
right,
with the
all
regular
right.
season, we'll talk
Okay,
about playoffs.
okay,
Then I'll let you rake
okay.
me over the coals on that, okay? But I wanna talk to Mr. Calobski here because he hasn't said much so far. Because he and I were both players in the amateurs division. I should say, this season called the Ducklings division. Um, and Mr. Klobski here ended up becoming a champion himself,
Yes, sir.
as an ADC on.
As a first round pick.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Um,
Too late,
but
if you ask me.
yeah, too late.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, throwing shade already. Okay. Um, but it interestingly enough, I mean, to be frank, and I'm going to be very frank with you, Klobski, I didn't see you guys doing this. I genuinely didn't.
Oh, trust me, we knew. We knew
Like,
from
I
the
knew you
very
guys were going to
beginning.
be good, and I thought you guys would be competitive. But, like, when you guys meshed in a way that I was not expecting. Like, you guys had a team fight presence that very, very few teams I have seen in QSL have, and it frustrated me to no end because my team couldn't get it together. Just saying.
Yeah,
No,
Um,
there was something special about that. No doubt. It was my first time in a long time being a part of a competitive team like this, and I don't know, my standards, we were talking about it the other day. My standards have just shot through the roof now. Like I feel like I'm going to be like I'm setting myself up for disappointment in future seasons because of what we accomplished this season, but it's still going to be a fun time.
I mean, you can't get any worse than I'm doing, so Just don't worry about yourself too much on that one. For those who are listening, I've been a part of QSL since season 2. I know Cooter, you were in season 1. I think
I think Cyber was in season
Cyber
1
was
too.
season 1 too.
I was season 2. I
You were
came at the
season
end of
2?
season 1. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I came in at the end of season 1 as well. I was a free agent towards the end of playoffs. Or not, or the end of the regular season, then playoffs. But yeah, no, I played in the mini league in season 2, which would have been minors at that time. And
We don't talk about Bruno.
no, we don't talk about that. I have to talk about that because those were my glory days. Excuse me, sir. Because
Okay.
that's the last time I've won set in competitive
Yeah.
Smite.
Oh,
Oh,
boy.
Red.
Oh my.
Oh no, Red. Oh no.
Season 2 of QSL was the last time I won a set in QSL.
Oh
Oh my god. Oh no, bro.
Well,
I was
to be
on.
fair,
I was
he
on the.
only plays in QSL.
No,
Yeah.
actually, I don't.
Oh.
Yeah, he's encountered the Reap.
I've played in 2 other leagues. I'm actually in I'm in Reap and I was in Gassel at one point. But no, I was on the Turtle Ducks this season, and our only game win came against the Adelis. And yes, Tuxley, I'm going to say Adelis because I'm an American and I will pronounce it that way. I'm not
Is that
pronouncing it
wrong?
your messed up Canadian
No.
English Commonwealth way.
Ross's
Wait.
YouTuber's
Yeah, how
Paradise.
is it supposed to be pronounced?
So
Yeah, I thought it was the delis.
the American way of saying it and the scientific understanding way of saying it is Adelis. If you are English, it is the Adelays.
Adelie, what?
No one's calling it that.
Yes,
Interesting.
it
No
is
one's
the
calling it
Adelays.
that. Adelie. That's actually kind of a fire
Adelie.
name.
Yeah.
No, man, that
No,
does
it's
not.
not.
That's
No,
not
it's
You don't think
not.
it's
fire.
fire?
Not
I think
fire.
it's kind of fire.
I love Tux, but that ain't it, bruh. Just keep it, bruh.
So, but interestingly enough, this was, in my opinion, I think the Duckling matchups. I think the Duckling division is probably where you saw the most disparity between the top and the bottom. I mean, you had a little bit of that in Deep Sea, but I think Ducklings really had it polarized, where your bottom of the barrel was truly bottom of the barrel. There was a difference between a team that could compete and a team where you just looked and went, they have no chance. They have zero chance. I mean, sadly, I was on a team that had zero chance.
Which was really weird, Red, because I
Which,
think after the
yeah.
draft, like looking at that team, it's really not that bad. I mean, you had a jungler that was, very decent, top third. You had a top third mid laner. You had a top third support. I mean, that's a lot of top thirds, and you guys just, I don't know, just couldn't put it together. I guess. Did you guys like scrim? Did you practice
We
like together as a
had
team?
we had 2 scrims, but we would play casuals together every so often.
Sure.
But it was it was so hard for me because it's like I was trying to do that, and I was in SDL and Reap at the same time, and I mean, which I still paid more attention to QSL just because I knew the people in QSL better, still do. But it was more along the lines of like our jungler would only show up for limited amounts of time.
Oof.
And so we ended up having to put in our sub,
Uh-huh.
and it was, no offense to our sub at that time, but there was a big disparity
Sure.
between the number 1 guy and a sub coming in to try and mesh with the team. And it was real hard because we're used to the way that jungler is playing. We're used to what he's able to and capable of doing, and it just wasn't the same. And so we ended up kind of getting stuck. So that's exactly what happened in the Adeli's game, which was game 1. We had our starting jungler, and I think it was like a 24-minute win for us.
Mhm.
And then game 2 was like a 33-minute loss, and then game 3 was like a 43-minute loss.
Oh man,
It
that's
was-
right. I
yeah.
forgot about that set. It was a long one.
So that set was a nightmare to cast. I do apologize to the casters on that one. It still was not as bad as our scrim, because our scrim started off. We actually ended up scrimming the Serbs, and we ended up having a 56-minute game 1 against the Serbs.
Wow, that's a long game.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's the longest game I've seen in competitive Smite. Like I've seen weird like outlier games, but that's the longest competitive game I've seen. But yeah, that one, I mean, so I guess we can kind of evolve into playoffs now. So in the Deities Conference, the way we had it set up this season was we had the top 2 teams from each conference make the playoffs, and the top seed from the one conference would play the second seed from the other conference. So 1 played 2 going one way, and then 1 played 2 going the other way. Now that ended up for some interesting pairings, because you had in the Kraken's Deities Conference, you had the King's Rooks as 1 and Land Barons as 2, going up against the Emperors as 1 from the Immortals Conference, and the Bakas as 2. So the Rooks played the Bakas and the Emperors played the Barons. And looking across the board, you're going, this is an interesting set of games here. Down in Deep Sea, it was the Ferrymen. Obviously, they went 10-0, and then the Landlords. And then on the other side, it was Rockhoppers and Meow Lovers. And in the Ducklings division, you had the King's Pawns and the Peasants, which were part of the Landlords organization, playing against the Cookie Cutters and the V Cat Girls. So if we want to devolve into the playoff bracket now, and I'm going to call it devolve because I know Cyber's going to rake me over the coals in this one. But
I'm waiting.
You're waiting. Let's talk about Kraken's playoffs first before we get into I know what Cyber wants to ask me. But when we get to Kraken playoffs first, so semifinal 1, and Cooter, your org was involved in this one. The Kings Rooks against the V-Bakas, and Ross, your org was there too. So interesting game, right?
Yeah. It was it was very
Go ahead.
interesting. So game 1, it looked like it was a really really good with my team. We won really good. They banned out the emoji, and then I think everything just fell through, and then Cooter's team won. Must be nice.
Ouch. Ooh.
But
Ooh.
I love all the players on my team that was on my all 3 divisions on my team. I really appreciate them all. It just sucks that we couldn't make it to the finals like we did last season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's a talented roster you had without a doubt. But peek behind the curtain. Now that the season's over, a small peek behind the curtain of what the King's Court Rooks were going with that set, right? So they end up losing game 1 of that set, and I hope they don't mind me telling the story, but there was like a giant conflict happening within the team after that loss. One person said something, the other person didn't like it, the third person's like, both of you stop talking, and like they were all going back and forth to the point that like somebody was like, hey, we're just gonna forfeit the set. So I'm like, I jump in the VC and I'm like, what is happening? And like half of them have left the VC and they're like done with the set or whatever.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
like, okay, come back here and talk to me. What is going on? So we had a conversation about it, and luckily everybody said, hey, we'll finish out the set, and they went into game 2. And hilariously enough, one person said that they thought a pick was really bad after the picks and bans of game 1, and the other person was like, no, that pick would be really good, and that person ended up picking that pick out of spite for game number 2. and that pick ended up being the central factor for the win. After after the first game, it ended up being the central factor for the second game, and then they go on to win the set. It was a very yeah, you hit it on the head, Ross. Like, it was interesting, very interesting. But I'm happy that we got to play it. It was a fun set.
Yeah, it was a really good fun set. I was really confused too because I remember after game one, I came into the call because I remember I was just looking at the match set and I was just thinking like, what's going on? So I came in there and I asked, yo, what's going on? They were just like, yeah, it looks like they're arguing and like they want to forfeit and all this. I was just like, I mean, I was like, just follow rules, if they do
Yeah.
forfeit, it sucks, but like at least try to play it out because like it was a really good set, after game one, and glad enough they played and it was a really good set either way.
No doubt. Yeah. I think mentals were the entire set of the win factor in that set. We lost game 1 because we lost our mentals, and I think after game 2, I think your team ended up losing their mentals. And I think that mentals were the winner in the set.
Yeah, now, so obviously, Kingsrix took that one 2-1, and the one on the other side, which kind of surprised me a little bit, just looking at how things panned out, Emperors and Land Barons. Now, in my playoff bracket that I originally had, I had the Bakas finishing first and the Emperors finishing second, and so my seeds were actually swapped. But that's because there was some. How do I put this delicately? I really don't want to put it delicately because I am a little butthurt about this. I'm just gonna say, but when people don't play their games when they've signed up to play games,
Yes.
and they try to cram things in at the last second, just saying, you know, like a average temperamental adult, it's perturbing. Just put it that way. It's perturbing. But so I originally had the Bakas facing the Land Barons, the Emperors facing the King's Rooks, and I thought originally that, well, the Emperors might have a shot against the Land Barons, but they're not going to beat the King's Rooks. Bakas, I don't think are good compared to Land Barons, so it'll be King's Rooks, Land Barons, no issues, no problems. Oh boy, was I wrong. So the Emperors end up playing the Land Barons competitively, but again, at the end of the day, I don't know how big the man's backpack is, but Sandman Sam, like, is there a way where, like, Mr. Blobfish can just stop for a second, take a breath? Just asking. But I really think was it game 3 in that set? It was the last game in that set. I can't remember if it was game 2, game 3. But
I think it was 2.
Was it 2? He popped off. He had a really good game on the last one of that set. And then of course, I guess we can, since we do have Cooter here, the championship game between King's Rooks and Land Barons.
Mm-hmm.
Your gentleman played very well. I'm going to put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it was quite. I don't think it was as close as I was initially expecting.
I mean, overall, it was unfortunate. There was an event that was unfortunate there. They needed a little more time than was possible for a potential 5-game set. So we ended up settling for a 7:30 start time, which was, it's for a best of 5. That's a pretty late start time. you can ask Cyber. I mean, he was in a best of 5, and they went 5 games, and they ended up being done at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. So unfortunately, the land barons did have to forfeit game 1 and game 2 because somebody didn't update Smite or whatever the situation was. Most situations, like, okay, like things happen, we can wait. But in a best of 5, it's kind of sucks. But the game that was played was phenomenal in my opinion. Um, it just really went to show, like, there was a point in the game where the landlord's team was they were up in kills by like 4 or 5, but the rooks ended up being up by like 5,000 or 6,000 gold when that was happening. So
Mhm.
the rooks, they really, I mean, they showcased, and I don't want to tune my own team's horn too much. I feel like I do that too much as it is, but um they really were on time to things that they needed to be on time to, and they really just overall out farmed the opposing team and ended up winning the game, and they won the game up 22K at the end of it. So um but it was a good game. I mean, there were times where the land barons looked like they could just win one team fight and come back, um but it ended up being the 3-0 victory for the Rooks, and I was happy to have been a part of that vicariously, I guess.
Mhm. All right, now I guess we have to talk about it. All right, Deep Sea.
Gosh.
All right, Cyber.
Yes.
I'll let you start. I'll let you start this one off. So let me lay the scene out for for the people that are listening. So semifinal 1 was Ferrymen and Meow Lovers. Semifinal 2 was Rockhoppers and Landlords. And I originally had predicted Ferrymen versus Rockhoppers in semifinal 1 and Meow Lovers versus Landlords in semifinal 2. Because that's the way I thought it would play out. It was the most logical way of things playing out. Because again, people didn't play the games that they needed to when they needed to. So I'm like, okay, I think this is how it's going to do. And again, Ferryman on a 10-0 run going into playoffs. I thought, you know what? The Rockhoppers just had the wrong draw. And so I had the Ferryman winning. And then I thought, you know what? As good as Meow Lovers could be, I think the Landlords are just a bit better than them. And I think the Ferrymen are just going to take it and it's not going to be a problem. However, I thought, at least at that time, the true final was Ferryman versus Rockhoppers because whoever won that one was going to be the other two. I just thought that's the way it was going to pan out. And I ended up being wrong. Oh, all right, Cyber, go for it.
Where do I start? That's the ultimate question here. You know, I just want to start by saying, everyone doubted my team to begin with. Um, Everyone thought that we weren't gonna compete. Everyone thought that the landlords and the ferryman was gonna just run away with it. Um, so yeah, we was pretty confident though. We knew our potential. We knew how good we were as players to at least make finals run in a sense. So, we played regular season, we did pretty good, came to playoffs, and then everyone was like, "Oh yeah, there's no way the Rockhoppers beat the Landlords." And shout out to the Landlords, they played terrific. We won 2-1. It was a pretty close set, to be honest. And that's kind of just how that went. And then we got the finals, and everyone was like, "Ferryman has won 12 straight games. They haven't dropped a set." And we was looking like, oh yeah, this might be it. But we was pretty confident. And then we go into the game, we go down 0-2, and we just had to reset our mentals in a sense. Being down 0-2, we're like, oh yeah, we haven't been lose at this point. And somehow, some way, we figured out what the ferrymen aren't good at and doing in inside the game, and we just abused that. To be honest, like we realized that our team fighting wasn't as good as their team fighting to a certain extent. So then it was like, let's separate them and let's cause them to not team fight, or someone's out of position, let's pick them off before we start the team fight. And that's kind of just how we climb back into it, to be honest. And it was an amazing set, but it did last like Cooter said to 2 in the morning, which was kind of just exhausting. Really, really exhausting.
I
Yeah.
definitely can imagine. I was not awake for that entire set. I can definitely tell you that. But I did get to see the beginning of that, and that was an enjoyable set to watch. At least the first couple of games, where I'm not going to say that it looked like it was like an inevitable ferryman win. You guys had your flashes of brilliance even in game 1 and game 2, where it's like, well, if you guys could get this online or that online, you could have taken game 1 or you could have taken game 2, but it didn't matter at that point because you decided to win game 3 anyway.
Yeah, it was interesting gameplay. I'll tell you that much. It was definitely an interesting set. But yeah, it just feels good when everyone like tells you like oh yeah, these guys they'll never win, and then you just win anyway. It's kind of just a good feeling, to be honest. Shout out to the
Everybody loves
Ferrymen
that
though.
underdog.
They played a
Yep.
they played a great set.
All right.
I don't think
Now,
there's-
finally, we'll get on to our last one. Oh, unless you want to continue that.
For me?
No? I thought Ross
Oh.
had something to say.
Oh no, I'm sorry. No.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then let's talk about ducklings here. I hope Calobski's still awake. I know he hasn't said much. But okay,
I'm
he's
here.
here. Good. All right. So Mr. Calobski, your team and I came within 2 games of predicting this thing down to the wire. I mean, like, down to every single game. I had almost every single one. I did say the championship was going to go to a game 5. I was wrong. But I had every prediction correct in ducklings. Every single one of them.
Big Brain Red.
So King's Pawns came in as the first seed. Cat Girls came in as second of the Immortals Conference. They played each other in semifinal 1. In semifinal 2 was Cookie Cutters and Peasants, which, to be honest, I think the King's Pawns Cat Girls game was interesting. But I think the closer game that I wasn't expecting to be as close of a game was Cookie Cutters and Peasants.
Really?
Yeah. I was actually expecting, because of how the Cookie Cutters had played that season, I was expecting it to be team fight versus strong lane. Because the Peasants really, let's be honest, they keyed off of Cojones and Jeering Lamb. And if they didn't have a good game, they weren't winning that game. That's just the way it worked. And the Cookie Cutters basically said, we don't care, we're going to shove it down your throat anyway. So Cookie Cutters ended up defeating the Peasants quite handily, but I really want to talk, since I have both of you here, King's Pawns and Cat Girls. So King's Pawns, I know you guys had, and I did put you guys as the favorites to win this one. You guys did win this one, but was this a we just go in and play like we normally do, or and this is for both of you, Cooter and Ross. Did your team come into this as we're just going to play this like we normally do and see what happens, or did you actually try and gear tactics specifically for the other team?
Do you want to take this one first, Cooter, or you want me to?
I mean, my
first?
answer's pretty simple. I mean, our entire season came down to like we have a lot of talent, and we're just going to play our game and force other teams to play our game with us because we know that we beat them if they play our game, right?
Mhm.
And in that set, I had a player that wanted and had something to prove versus the same role in the other team, being that he was playing behind this player the season before, and that would be Speedy. Speedy was very motivated in this set. He really wanted to show high altitude, hey, I've improved a lot. I played behind you last year, but I am the alpha. And that's kind of what he did in that set. He kind of decided that
Mhm.
he wanted to put the team on his back and try to win the set for them. But in terms of preparation, we really just played our game. We play our game. We should win a lot of those sets, but with not a lot of preparation. What about you, Russ?
Oh gosh. So it was hilarious actually. I remember it was after Serbs, and we pretty much knew we were going to face against either pawns or cookie cutters. We were hoping it was pawns, which we did. Then after that, pretty much I was saying that they're gonna play off of Achilles and Genitalia. Because for me personally, I teamed with Genitalia like 2 seasons ago, like season 4 of QSL, and that guy right there, he I had a feeling he can make it or break it like any set. I feel like he was
Mm-hmm.
the number one best ADC in Ducklings. So
Mm-hmm.
coming into that set,
Hmm.
we knew that we had to go strong in the paint, and we knew that we were going to prepare for it. Uh, in game one, I was not expecting Speedy to just run it down as I would say, and just like completely like just uh didn't have fun with any of the carries. So that was very interesting, but I think it was just a really good set. It sucks that my team had to lose, but I guess jungle diff.
I guess jungle diff.
I mean, I would say, and this is just from an outsider looking at it, um, in that set specifically, and a little bit even in the championship, I actually liked Speedy playing more than I liked Lyman Nelson, to be honest.
Mhm.
I think Speedy brought an aggressiveness that I didn't see from Lineman. And I thought that your team played off of the aggressiveness from Speedy better than they played off a lineman. And that again, that's just someone from the outside looking in. I don't know, Calobski, how
Yeah.
you saw it in game either.
Um, I mean, no disrespect by saying this, but let's just say I had a preference of who I wanted to be on the other team when we loaded in. And I mean no disrespect when I say that. Um, but I mean, yeah, Speedy was definitely out for something to prove. I could tell that, Cooter. To your point, I could tell
Uh-huh.
he was trying to prove something, like whatever that was. He was out there doing it. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a really, really weird dynamic that we had, right? So, like Red said, I mean, a lot of our game revolved around setting up our carries. Because Achilles plays in such a way that, he's diving the carries, making them feel uncomfortable, but he's got a ton of protections. He's not the type of solo laner to like build a bunch of damage and, be a jungle 2 in essence, right? So linemen really fit earlier in the season in terms of us trying to play that way. Because line is better at setting up and playing that kind of facilitator role than Speedy is, right? So we were kind of leaning into that a little bit, and then um, Speedy was also away for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that, where he had to miss 2 games or 3 games. So obviously, Line played in those ones, but when Line was in, he was the facilitator for Nino, for Telia, and that's kind of the way that we played. But um, later in the season, we decided to go with Speedy because Arc improved a ton, and he and Achilles were doing just a fine job doing it themselves. So we just, then we were leaning the other way. We were leaning into Speedy being just a massive disruptive force for our team.
Yeah, so
Peek behind the curtain.
behind the curtain. Yeah, so again, congrats to those teams, and obviously for you guys for making playoffs. All those teams for making playoffs, but then congrats to the Kings Rooks, the Rockhoppers, and the Cookie Cutters for winning their respective divisions. So let's talk about maybe some players we'd like to highlight after season 5 here. So one of the things that the admin team decided was we were not going to have Quacken All-Stars like we had had previously. There was a lot of interest in having that kind of status symbol, but nobody really wanted to play a whole duck soup thing. Nobody really wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
mess with that kind of stuff. Um, I know I tried in, I think it was season 2, with the mini league where I think it was, I think Slim and I basically said, "Here's our all stars. This is the way it's gonna be."
Oh.
um, I think I remember doing a tier list in season 2 where it was Slim and I doing a tier list, and we said, "Okay, we're just gonna pick who our all stars would be," and I think those ended up being the official all stars because the admin team was like, "Yeah, sure, we're not doing it, so why not?" Um, but we had fun. I know we played like some random weird assault stuff. We ended up doing some blind pick stuff. We messed around, um, but one thing I do want to do, even if we're not going to pick all stars together, but maybe if each of you gentlemen could think about, and we'll start with Ross here, um, maybe for each division, kind of pick, and it can be someone from your team, someone not from your team, whatever you want, but maybe a most valuable player and maybe a most improved player for each division. Maybe someone who either stuck out, someone who did their job effectively, or maybe somebody that a team couldn't live without. So Ross, if you could, maybe a most valuable player and then a most improved player.
So I'm gonna start with Ducklings because that's where I was at last season. The most valuable player was probably, I have to say, Elite Sniper. That guy, facing against him, and also like seeing how he played throughout the whole season, it seemed like he literally was carrying that team on his back most of the time. Like, there was some sets where I have to see him where he was pretty much hope where it was either Sir or Calobski or even Napa was just frying, but then I just see Elite Sniper just going in there and just making the plays that they need to do. Uh, so shout out to him. He's my MVP. The most improved, I'm gonna pick someone on my team that was drafted, which is I am Cornball, aka J Bam. No one believed in this guy at all throughout, like, I want to say, through the whole season. I think like no one like really knew him, and like when they did see him play, they thought he was just like, I guess, being aggressive or inting. But that man, in my opinion, improved from like when we first scrimmed, where he was just like an aggressive player, all the way to like that last set against the Peasants, where he like transformed his game and like just took more of a leadership in shot calling way. So shout out to him. He love that guy to death. AK J Ban's the goat. uh, in Deep Seas, I think MVP has to be I want to say either like it's so. I have like three. I have 100 Big Balls, 100 Big Malls. I don't know how to say that name. My fault if I butcher that name to death, but my fault. Him, V Strat, and I'll say Cyber. And the reason why is like all three of them are just absolutely mind blowing. I feel like Cyber in the finals was practically like doing OP shit and just carrying the play. And then V Strap and Hunter Big Malls, I think they're just really, really good. They're OP. Uh Shout outs to them. All play really good. And then most improved. Uh I don't really have most improved, honestly. Uh so I'm just gonna say shout out to out of Mark X Wings. I think he did. I think he's really cool.
Oh yeah. That's a
So
good one.
I'll give it him as my word. For Krakens, I think we just got to go with Sandman. Sandman, the GOAT. You know, he has to take MVP. I think he did really good, especially in playoffs. Was just frying and doing really well. And for most improved, I gotta get it Rigid Wriggle. Uh, I pretty much was playing with him, or not playing with him, but knowing him from like season 4 at QSL when he was my what is it, major captain or Kraken's captain at that time, and pretty much from how he played in jungle to like right now support and all that stuff, I think he improved a lot. So shout out to him.
Excellent.
Take it over.
Okay.
All right, Cyber, your turn.
I'll go next. Yes, sir. All right. So let's start with Ducklings. All right. So for most improved player, I gotta give it to my boy Speedy. Um, People didn't expect him to be as good and as dominant as he was. So I feel like he definitely improved from last season to this season. So that's why I'm gonna give that to him. And MVP, probably gonna have to give it Russ here and just pick Elite Sniper. I feel like if you take Elite Sniper off that team, they do a lot worse than what they were doing. So
May y'all forget that you're talking to a guy that was on that team. I feel a little disrespected.
I'm sorry, but he
Now, that's the
he
second
was
time I've heard
popping
that.
off almost every game, man. He was popping off almost every
No,
game.
you're right.
So I'm gonna give that to him. All right, Deep Sleep. So for most improved player, I have two choices here, but I'm gonna choose my own teammate. I'm gonna choose Mark X Wings because I feel like he went undrafted and no one thought that he was like, I guess, good enough to be drafted. And then he turned to a real key opponent in the playoffs for us, and probably one of the biggest reasons we was able to win. So I'm gonna give that to him. But I want to give a shout out to Craig Afro because he definitely stepped up. So he's second most improved player in my opinion. MVP probably Strat. I feel like if you take Strat off that team, they also do a lot worse, especially since they played off Soul Lane almost every game. If they didn't have that dominant Soul Lane, I kind of wonder if they would still be undefeated. So that's kind of just where I'm at. Krakens, most improved player. I have to give that to my guy Corbin. Corbin definitely popped off, and especially in playoffs and the games that he played in playoffs, he kind of was even most of the games against Sandman. So I feel like coming from Deep Sea going to Kraken, playing solo, playing against Sandman, and you're not getting obliterated, I feel like that's a big step. And then MVP, that's a hard one to be honest, but I'm just gonna go based off what I've seen, and I'm probably just gonna give it to Drew. I think Drew was kind of just a fragger, man. In my opinion, he was kind of just fragging. So I'm gonna give him MVP for Kraken. And yeah,
Alrighty.
that's mine.
We'll head right on up the list here, and Mr. Cooter, why don't you give us your picks here?
Okay. I guess I'll start from the amateurs as well. I think amateur MVP. I'm gonna go with the same team that you guys picked, but I think I'm gonna go to a different position. I'm gonna go Napa for amateur MVP. I think that team without Napa puts a lot more pressure on Calobski. And I think that if you don't have to worry about Calobski and Napa being together, I think their support played a style that was more dive-esque. So they really did a lot of work appealing for each other. So I have to give it to Napa. Sorry,
That's a
Kolobski.
polite way of putting it.
I mean, honestly, the style worked. Obviously, they won the finals. So, but I think Napa was the best player there. But for most improved, I have to give it to somebody on my own team. I'm going to give it to Ark. So to start the season, Arc was, I mean, he was my last pick, and I picked him to be a backup solo if we went one direction, backup support if we went a different direction, and he ended up, I mean, in everybody's world, he ended up as a top, we'll say top 2 support in amateurs, and he was doing a fantastic job playing his role very well going into the end of the season. So from beginning to end, if that's what we're measuring, I think it's Arc. But Miners MVP for me is gonna be V-Strat. That team is absolutely. I think Cyber hit it. I think that team is like. I don't think they go 10-0 without V-Strat being on that team. But Miner's most improved player is also going to be V-Strat for me. The only Miners player to most likely that is going to be drafted into majors next season, and this dude was in amateurs last season. So over the last 2 seasons, this guy has improved immensely, and I think that he definitely needs recognized with a most improved player award. And then in majors, I think the MVP I struggle with because Alfie just did things over in the solo lane, um, but he wasn't necessarily like the vocal leader on the team. But when you look at slash lines and when you watch the game, he's really controlling the game, but he's not really the one, talking most of the time. That was a lot of Joe, but I think I am going to give it to Alfie, just for the fact that he kept most solo laners, including Sandman Sam, in check over there in the solo lane. Didn't let them rotate. Really out rotated everybody in the league. Um, and most improved player in majors. To be honest, I don't really have one. I mean, those players are, top tier players, and over the course of the season, I think it matters more at that level having 5 players that mesh well together. And I don't think I could give an award to as a most improved award to somebody in that division, to be honest. So those are my picks.
All right, and let's round it off with Mr. Calobski. So, what are your
Wait, Red, you
picks?
get one too. Get out of here. We're gonna go
Oh,
Klopsky, then you.
all right. Calobski, go ahead. You first, though.
If you gentlemen don't mind, I'm gonna stick to what I'm familiar with, and I'm gonna just like completely cross off the ballot of the Kraken's division. Like I said, I didn't peek 1 second into the Kraken's division this season. Uh,
That's
Boo
fair.
me, I know. But as far as almas go, I'm gonna have to agree with Cooter. It's biased and everything. I know my teammate and I love him to death, but Napa was doing things, and I would also like to mention, if we're talking most improved player, someone mentioned something like this for um, the Deep Sea division, but my boy Napa was like the last pick of the draft as well. So if we're talking like body of work and like as a whole, I don't feel like Napa improved that much because he was just who he was coming into it. Being the last pick of the draft and then turning out to be the MVP, that says something for most improved player. But I'm gonna have to go with Arc Cooter, your boy Arc. I agree with you on that. We played him earlier in the season, and coming back and playing him in the playoffs, it was a different style. I mean, he definitely improved. Going to Deep Sea though, I like what someone said. I think it was it Cyber or Ross? One of you guys said that Mark X Wings went undrafted, and I think for me, that's going to be my most improved player. Just watching him in finals specifically, like that doesn't look like an undrafted guy to me. And then MVP, I think we're all in agreement. V Strat was nuts this season. Watching him in finals, it was unfortunate that the Ferryman, like, we're all a fan of underdog stories and everything. So the Rock Operas winning that was pretty interesting. But the Ferrymen were so dominant, and I think that you have to give a lot of credit to that to V Strat. So yeah, that's about it for me.
All right, I guess I can't shirk off the inevitable here.
Better not.
No.
Nope. You cannot.
Let's hear
You
it.
cannot.
Time for gamer time, bro.
Oh man, See, and I don't know, and I'm gonna before I get into this, I'm gonna give a little aside here. I don't know how this happened, but like everybody started with tier lists, and I just like started throwing things out, and I started doing like this whole like explanation, like going on and like doing a live stream of what my tier list was gonna be. And there's like this ethos around it now, so I almost feel like my words have to have like some thought behind them, and like because there's like some gravitas or something that, ooh, Red said this or Red said that. So I'm gonna give a little bit of background to why I'm making my picks, how I'm doing it, because I'm used to it now. I'm used to having to do this now. I'm also gonna start in Ducklings, just like everybody else kind of did. It's what I'm most familiar with. It's the people I played against. And it's the people that I think that I could more easily relate to in what the spectrum would be. Um, and I bounced around with the MVP pick a couple of times because it could be, how do you define most valuable player? Is it the most valuable to a team that accomplished great things? Is it most valuable as in if you took this player off a team, they don't accomplish what they did, or they don't even get as far as they did, or they don't even win games at all? Um, I think that's sort of that tension there, and I think it's just vague enough. That's why everybody kind of has their own understanding of MVP. Um, but my MVP pick is, and this one, I know it's coming out of left field, but my MVP pick is going to be Cojones, and for this reason and this reason alone. If you take that man off that team and you stick him anywhere else, aside from cookie cutters, in my opinion, and I think to a certain extent even cookie cutters, if you take him off that team and you don't give him the expectation of, hey, we need you to go and have a 6 KDA in order for us to win games, I don't think he steps up. I just don't think he does. And no offense, but I don't think if you put any of the other junglers, I don't think if you put Elite Sniper in that position, or you put Sphinx in that position, or even if you put, Speedy in that position, or Lineman in that position, I don't think they do that. I don't think they're able to do what Cojones does for that team. And so in that, I kind of have to give him MVP with a definite nod to both Elite Sniper and Nappa for what they did, because they don't win a championship without those two guys. I just think that without Cojones, the Peasants team, I don't even know if they make playoffs, to be honest. Um, so that's my MVP there. For most improved, and this is very difficult on an amateurs division, because you have such a spectrum going from bronze players to plat players, and that knowledge base that can change even over the course of one season. But I've heard it a couple of times before, and I'm gonna have to continue with this. It's gonna have to be Arc. He ends up with the top assists of anybody in the Ducklings division. He ends up with 184 assists as a support. He goes 14, 29, and 184 with a KDA 366, which as a support, he ends up with the 9th highest KDA in the division. That is substantial. The other thing is, he's not a natural support. He just isn't. He plays solo, he's played mid, he's played ADC, he's done all these things. He's never really focused on support, and now he comes into this role as a support and seems to flourish almost. And I don't know if it's because he feels natural in it, or if it was just the team around him that supported it. But I think I was expecting Arc to be middle of the pack, maybe under that. And instead he ends up being, in my opinion, one of the top 2 or top 3 supports in QSL Amateurs Division. So good on Arc for that one. Now, switching to the Deep Sea side of things. Again, the team is so stacked that it's part of my innate being to not want to give an MVP from the team, but I have to, and I gotta agree with you guys. Strat, V-Start, just doing what he does, going from being amateurs last season to minors this season, pulling out a 4.74 KDA. He ends up 57, 21, and 85 on the regular season, and demonstrating how effective he can be, and kind of becomes that focal piece for the team when they need him to be. So I give him all the credit in the world for that. So I am 100% there with you guys. He's my MVP. My most improved player. This is such a tough one for me because there are people where I look at him and go, you know, last year this person could easily have been amateurs, could easily have been, deep sea, or maybe they started in deep sea, stayed in deep sea because they never really progressed to that masters level or the upper diamond level. They haven't cracked that top echelon. But I think Strat fits that as well. Kind of agreeing with Coot on this one. It's, I mean, you could definitely give a nod to Mark X Wings, but knowing Mark from season 2 and season 3, I kind of expected him to come back with a vengeance when he played to kind of prove himself, and I think he did that effectively. But the person I never expected it out of was V-Sturt. I never expected him to step up in the way he did. I thought, to be quite honest, with that kind of a roster, the 2 people that I was most worried about was Strat and was Craigafro. Craig coming out of Amas, Strat coming out of Amas. They are new to the deep sea. They're not the big fish in the pond anymore. Now they're having to face diamond level competition. Now they're having to face guys that are on the verge of cracking masters. I mean, they have that pressure now on them where they didn't have that at all before. And somehow, some way, they managed to find a team where everything clicks and they become essential pieces in that team. So, most improved, I gotta go to Strat with that one, with a tip of the hat. My second place going to Craig on that one. I mean, Craig goes 51, 19, and 86 as the ADC, ends up with the 5th highest KDA in deep seas. Just a phenomenal run by him. So again, it's so close. It's almost like 1A, 1B between Strat and Craig. So that's my deep sea MVP, MIP. Now, Kraken, and here's where it's difficult, and I understand where Cooter was coming from, where it's like, how do you have an MIP kind of thing? But for MVP, and there's a lot of arguments to be made in, I mean, in various ways. But my MVP is going to go to someone who has one of the top 10 KDAs in Krakens. he is a vocal leader, and I do mean emphasis on the vocal, to the point where it can be distracting, I would say, and can be a detriment to his character if you don't take it in the best of ways at all times. And so Sandman, I'm giving you MVP because I just don't think that roster does anywhere near what it's supposed to do if you're not there. I swear he has a backpack big enough to go 1v9 and somehow, some way carry a Kraken's team. And it's infuriating because you should not be that good, first of all. And second of all, your conduct in Gen Chat drives me nuts. just to say, just putting that out there as a chat mod. Your conduct in Gen Chat drives me nuts, but thank you for making the QSL a better place and congrats on getting my MVP. Now, all right. MIP, most improved. This is such a tough one. This is such a tough one for me because there were so few games played. We had 40% incompletion. And so you want to put it on players that played a majority, but I think this is a person who he last season was kind of seen as, well, he's there, or well, maybe he could do something, but he was never really expected to do much. But he finishes with a 2 KDA, and it's effective for what it needs to be. And he didn't play much, and I'll grant him that. And as I'm thinking about it, it's like, there's a part of me that goes, well, is this person deserving? Is that person deserving? But what were the expectations? Like if you pull down a name like Armor Wolf, or you pull down a name like Joe from New York, or you pull down Bojo, or you say Not Grave, or you say, Hey Do, there's expectations. You're expecting them to do something effective on the team. But if I look down the list and go, who do I not expect to do anything? I mean, like, I'm not going to look at NMR and say, well, I'm not expecting him to carry a team, or I'm not expecting him to be good. Same thing with Clay City. Well, I'm not expecting him to be good. That's ludicrous. I'm expecting them to be the ones to carry teams. But if I say a name like Jay Wright, and you just sit there, or if I say a name like, and this is the funny one, if I say a name like War Squatch, I mean,
Yeah.
guys that didn't, like, they come into QSL, they're relatively unknown, or even if they are known, meh. So, as weird as it sounds, I'm giving my most improved to Dragon.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know, right? And the reason for that is last season, Dragon was the captain of a team, high expectations, was supposed to be here, there, everywhere, was gonna, carry the team, that kind of a thing. And it kind of all fell through. You never really expected him to be... you never expected him to have a bad day. And yet, he did. He repeatedly had a bad day. But when he finally did get to play, he played effectively. I'm not saying he played perfectly, but he played effectively. And I saw glimpses of why he became a captain in the first place. I'm not going to say it was perfect, but I'm going to say I saw glimpses of that I had not seen previously. And I think there's room for more improvement there. I heavily debated, and this is sort of my tip of the cap to someone else. I heavily debated actually giving it to Subkiller. Because Subkiller was one of those guys where everybody says, you know, there's an expectation on him, and I completely agree, there's an expectation on him. But Subkiller in Season 3 was so phenomenal that he was the first overall picked. And then in Season 4 and in Season 5, he falls further and further and further down the list. To the point where, you know, he goes 21, 21, 35 with a 1.83 KDA, but that's still not a terrible KDA. It puts him in about the top 15, top 20. And he's not nearly as dominant as he was previously. But he's starting to learn a different style of solo lane than grab King Arthur and go double key. And I think that if he continues down that path, he might be my most improved player next season. And he might even be an MVP next season if he keeps going the way he's going at this point. Just throwing that out there. So yeah, I guess that's my MVP and MIP stuff. So last thing, we're gonna cap off this whole shebang with this. So we've been going for almost an hour and a half now. We are missing Calobski. He had to go, so thank you, by the way, man, for being here. I do appreciate it. But for the rest of you who are here, what are your expectations for Season 6? Some new stuff is going to come out. We're probably going to do a preview episode before draft, so look for that in May. But what are your expectations for Season 6? What are some of the good things? What are some of the bad things that maybe might be remedied? What are you expecting for Season 6? Let's start with Cooter, and then go to Cyber, and then Ross. What are you expecting for Season 6?
Ooh, what am I expecting? Well, looking at the current signups as we can see them to prepare for the draft and things like that, I'm expecting or hoping that more Kraken players from previous seasons will sign up for this season. Because if not, I think that there's going to be some high-end deep sea players that would have to move up to Kraken to kind of balance it out a little bit. And if that happens, then I expect that the draft is going to mean a lot when it comes to the Kraken division. But I also see I expect a lot of growth going forward into the next season. I see a lot of new deep sea players, a lot of new duckling players, and I hope that captains and org owners start to take the draft more seriously and try to build the best team that they possibly can, instead of just building a team of their friends and hoping for the best. So yeah, that's what I'm about.
All right, Cyber, what are your thoughts for Season 6? What would you like to see? What do you hope to see? What are your expectations for Season 6?
Well, to be honest, man, I just want to see just every team be competitive. I want to see every team draft a good team, and like Cooter said, not just draft a friends team, but draft a team that you think will win it all. I'm kind of I'm not gonna speak on that, but yeah, I also expect to see more people just like improve at the game. To be honest, I feel like there's a few people in Amas that was in Amas this season, or Ducklings, that probably can be a decent player in Deep Sea. So that's really what I'm really excited about, to see the people improve and just overall see them just go crazy, kind of like Restrat did, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also expecting, some fixing the rules, just a tad bit. But you know,
Which rules,
that's
Cyber?
a work in progress. That's a work in progress.
What rules,
You
Cyber?
said what, Cooter?
What rules? What are you talking about?
What rules? So there's a couple rules, but the one main one was kind of what happened in playoffs with like pausing and things like that of that note and games crashing. I like to see that be like more specific in the rules in a sense, so that we don't have people be confused and things of that nature. Like, oh, but this team had this and this team. I will see just rules be more specific in certain areas. To be honest, that'll be a huge help going into next season, so that we don't have what we had this season.
More situationally clear.
Yes, and just more specific in general. To be honest, I think we have that. We'll be in a great shape going into season 6. Not gonna lie to you.
And Mr. Report or Support, what would you
Alright.
like to report for season 6?
Back to me again. Okay. I think honestly they touch it just more signups for the Krakens and just seeing how pretty much who's gonna get moved up. I honestly think that there's a lot of people that should get moved up, and if they do, then I'm excited to see how they will do in the upper divisions. And then I'm also excited to see the new people who signed up, because they could be a hidden gem that no one will ever know, but then all of a sudden they're just destroying. Um, I also like to see what is it? I can't think of the word. This is actually very important. Um, yeah. I think that's I can't think of what I was gonna say. It's like rolling off the tongue. So
Well, Ross, I
I
have a
think that
question, man. You speak on players being moved up. What players do you think should be moved up? Just name like 2 or 3 players you think deserve to be moved up.
V-Shot to majors. I think that guy just absolutely kills it. And then to Ducklings to Deep Sea, I think it should be either Elite Sniper. I want to see how he does, because that, and then Genitalia. I want to see how both of them do. I just want to see how they will. I know Genitalia in last season, or this season, or last season, actually, yeah, last season, he wanted to get to minors, but you know, he got drafted into the amateurs, and now he re-signed up for minors, and I'm hoping that he gets hopefully picked up, and just hopefully he just turns out to be a fragger there.
Okay.
Well, some of those things are already in process. I can tell you from the staff side of QSL, little peek behind the curtain. Some of those things have changed already. Some of that stuff is being talked about. The vetters are hard at work, I can tell you that. The committee is definitely looking at a lot of different factors, so that will definitely be in consideration. There are people that are moving up. There are people that are sort of on that borderline that could go one way, could go another. We're not sure. But for those of you who are listening, Season 6 draft will be May 15. I don't have a time yet, but May 15, plan your afternoon, evening to join us on the QSL Twitch, and we will be doing draft live this year. I should say this season, not this year, but this season. So you've got about 2 weeks. We're going to be starting up prospect games, and something new for season 6. We are requiring prospect games only for new players. So players that have been in QSL for the last season or two. There are no requirements for prospect games. After all, we just got done seeing you play for the last 2 months, so so we kind of have a grasp on who you are. But new players are going to be required to play a prospect game. In or around the division in which they signed up. So Deep Sea player, if you've signed up as Deep Sea, you'll be playing against Deep Sea. If you sign up as Duckling, we're going to try and pair you up with Duckling. Try and get you at least close to what you signed up as, just so we can see similar competition. That being said, a brand new thing for Season 6, we have just been granted permission from Hi-Rez and a couple other organizations. We're going to be working with some organizations to bring you guys some charity tourneys. So we're going to have sort of like how you saw Finchmas run. We're going to have some tournaments in Season 6 that are going to be on one weekend. You're going to be able to craft your own teams. You'll enter into the tournament, and there will be gem pricing. But in order to enter into the tournament, you will make a donation to a charity. And we're going to attempt to make these charities sort of fit around what the holiday is or what the season is, something like that. So keep your eyes and your ears tuned for what's coming down the pipe here. Our first one we're looking, hopefully, will be right around Memorial Day. So I hope you guys are interested in that, as well as getting Season 6 up and running. Got a lot of groundwork already laid, but still got some stuff working on. We're also planning on having a full stat sheet and a bunch of other stuff, but we're going to deal with all of that at our Season 6 preview in a couple of weeks. So, again, right here on the QSL official podcast, we will have that for you before draft. And then, of course, we'll have our post-draft special, our expectations, predictions, and like after draft day. So, gentlemen, final thoughts.
Hey, Red, what's the last day that somebody can sign up for QSL for Season 6?
Oh, thanks, Red. Back to you, Tom.
Yeah, good answer. Good
Busy, he's
answer,
busy,
Red.
he's busy.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm
Okay,
It's a little loud. I need to keep it down a bit.
you're okay.
It is late, so
It's not the
Yeah.
latest podcast of all time, though.
it is not the
But I
latest
get it.
podcast of all time. Yes.
What's
But
the last day somebody can sign up, man?
so our last day of signups is it- technically it's going to be May 8th, so it's 1 week before draft. Again, we want to make sure that people can get into prospect games if they need to get into prospect games. If you would like to sign up after that and you have already been in QSL, talk to one of the admins, but this gives you an entire 2 weeks essentially to sign up and get ready and get into Season 6. So think about it. Consider what's going on. This is going to be a little bit longer of a season because we're trying to make sure that we're allowing everybody to play and making it competitive. So, but try and get in as soon as you can. That's all I'm going to say at this point.
Cool.
So, but that being said, anything else, gentlemen?
Not really, man. Just cyber back-to-back seasons, man. Just wait on it.
All right. Well, from all of us here on the QSL podcast, thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate every listener that's here, every viewer on YouTube, and we hope that we will see you soon. Thank you for a great Season 5, and we hope to see you in Season 6. Again, we have Cooter, Cyber, we were joined by Calobski, and ReportorSupport, and myself, Redsniper 23. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. Remember, we got Smite. See you soon. Bye.